The untold truth behind Queen Mary's mysterious visit to Nigeria. Welcome to B News. In a world where diplomacy is often defined by state visits, political summits, and economic agreements, it's rare to witness a royal figure whose presence transcends ceremony and moves into the realm of heartfelt advocacy. But when Queen Mary of Denmark visited Nigeria, it wasn't just another page in a royal calendar, it was a deeply meaningful journey driven by purpose, compassion, and a commitment to global cooperation. Her visit sparked international attention, ignited conversations about international development, and left a lasting imprint on the hearts of those she met. But the pressing question remains: why did Queen Mary visit Nigeria? The answer is multi-layered, rich with global context, and far more impactful than many realize. Queen Mary's trip to Nigeria was not a state visit in the traditional sense. Rather, it was a working visit, an important distinction that signals action over pageantry. This wasn't about waving from balconies or hosting banquets, it was about entering communities, listening to voices that often go unheard, and using her royal influence to shine a global spotlight on urgent issues. As a longtime advocate for gender equality, maternal health, and sustainable development, Queen Mary came to Nigeria with a clear mission: to elevate efforts already underway, to forge partnerships, and to inspire hope and collaboration in a country bursting with youthful energy and potential. At the heart of Queen Mary's mission was a commitment to women's and girls' empowerment, a cause that has defined her public life. Nigeria, like many nations, faces challenges in achieving gender parity, especially in rural regions where access to healthcare, education, and economic opportunity can be scarce for women. Queen Mary's visit to local health centers and maternity clinics was not for show, it was a deliberate effort to meet the women on the front lines, to understand their struggles firsthand, and to advocate for the resources they need. She sat with new mothers, heard the stories of midwives working without sufficient tools, and stood beside Nigerian healthcare workers who battle daily to save lives. One of the most compelling moments of her trip came when she visited a girls' secondary school in Abuja. Here, surrounded by eager students in colorful uniforms, Queen Mary shared her own story, not as a monarch, but as a woman who once walked the world without a title. She spoke of growing up in Tasmania, Australia, far from the trappings of royalty. Her message was simple, yet profound: every girl, no matter her background, has the power to shape the future. The response from the students was electric. In that moment, Queen Mary wasn't just a royal figure. She was a role model, a mentor, a symbol of what's possible when women are empowered to lead. But Queen Mary's advocacy wasn't limited to speeches and school visits. She engaged directly with Nigerian government officials, including representatives from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Women Affairs, and key international partners like UNICEF and UNFPA. These meetings were not ceremonial, they were strategic. Discussions centered on real-world solutions, improving access to contraceptives, reducing maternal mortality rates, ending child marriage, and ensuring girls remain in school. Queen Mary brought to the table not just her title, but decades of experience as a global advocate, and her influence helped reinforce the urgency of these goals. The Queen's itinerary also included a powerful roundtable with Nigerian youth leaders and innovators, many of whom are at the forefront of Africa's digital revolution. Here, the conversation shifted toward technology, entrepreneurship, and the power of youth-led change. Queen Mary listened intently as young Nigerians shared how they were using apps to improve education, mobile clinics to reach remote communities, and digital platforms to combat gender violence. She encouraged their efforts, emphasizing the importance of investing in youth as agents of change. Her interest wasn't just symbolic, it was practical, reinforcing Denmark's ongoing partnerships with African youth programs and innovation hubs. Equally significant was her engagement in discussions around climate change and sustainable development. Nigeria, like many countries in Africa, faces climate threats ranging from desertification in the north to coastal erosion in the south. Queen Mary, who has long supported global climate initiatives, used her visit to highlight how environmental resilience must be a part of humanitarian development. At a panel with Nigerian environmental leaders and Danish climate experts, she explored collaborative solutions, including green energy initiatives and sustainable farming practices that can empower local communities. Queen Mary's cultural diplomacy also played a vital role in her visit. At a beautifully organized cultural forum hosted in Abuja, she was treated to traditional music, dance, and visual arts that told the story of Nigeria's vibrant history and heritage. The Queen, visibly moved, expressed deep respect for the country's diverse cultures and acknowledged how cultural identity can be a force for unity, especially in a nation as ethnically and linguistically rich as Nigeria. Her participation in this cultural exchange wasn't a diplomatic checkbox, it was a celebration of shared humanity and mutual respect. Another often overlooked element of Queen Mary's trip was her behind-the-scenes visits to local women-led cooperatives and grassroots NGOs. These low-profile visits, often without press, reflected her desire to engage authentically. She met with women artisans, small-scale farmers, and community organizers working to uplift neighborhoods plagued by poverty, lack of infrastructure, and insecurity. Her interactions were genuine, there was no barrier, no entourage shielding her. Queen Mary was there to learn, to uplift, and to remind these communities that their voices matter on a global stage. Security during her visit was understandably tight, given Nigeria's complex landscape, but Queen Mary made a point of not limiting her engagements to safe zones or elite venues. Her presence in less privileged areas sent a powerful message: true leadership does not avoid discomfort. It embraces it, listens within it, and works from it. She showed that compassion and courage can, and should, coexist in the work of diplomacy. Her interactions also prompted broader media coverage that went beyond headlines. Nigerian journalists, bloggers, and influencers took to the airwaves and social media to discuss the deeper meaning of her visit. Radio stations hosted panel discussions on gender and youth empowerment. Newspapers ran feature stories on the impact of global partnerships. On social media, the hashtag Queen Mary in Nigeria trended for days, with young Nigerians sharing quotes from her speeches, photos from her school visit, and reflections on how her presence resonated with their dreams. Queen Mary's visit also symbolized the evolution of modern monarchy, a shift from passive figureheads to active participants in global dialogue. Her trip reflected a new kind of royal diplomacy, one rooted not in spectacle, but in substance. By engaging directly with people on the ground, she broke down the walls between royalty and reality, showing that influence can be used to connect, collaborate, and empower. Denmark's ambassador to Nigeria spoke candidly about the significance of her visit, calling it a turning point in bilateral relations. While Denmark has long been involved in development work across Africa, Queen Mary's presence added emotional resonance and visibility to those efforts. Her support has already led to increased funding for health initiatives and renewed commitments to girls' education programs in northern Nigeria. As her visit drew to a close, Queen Mary addressed an audience of Nigerian and Danish delegates at a final reception. Her words were simple, yet powerful: "I came to Nigeria to listen, to learn, and to stand beside those doing the hard work of change. What I have seen here gives me hope, not just for Nigeria, but for our shared global future." Her sincerity struck a chord. She wasn't just thanking a country for its hospitality, she was saluting its strength, resilience, and potential. And as the dust settled on her remarkable visit, its impact began to ripple outward. Healthcare centers reported an uptick in donor interest. Youth organizations saw spikes in membership. New Danish-Nigerian initiatives began forming behind the scenes. More importantly, countless young Nigerians, especially girls, saw in Queen Mary a mirror of their own aspirations. They saw someone who, though born far away, carried a message that felt deeply personal: you matter. Your voice matters. Your future matters. Queen Mary's visit to Nigeria was not just a royal affair, it was a human one. It reminded the world that diplomacy, when rooted in empathy and action, can transform more than policies. It can transform lives. It reminded us that real change is possible when those in power walk humbly, listen deeply, and act courageously. And so we ask you, After witnessing the power of one royal visit to spark so much hope and conversation, what would happen if every leader in the world chose to lead not just with authority, but with empathy, curiosity, and the courage to truly listen?